In a world where everyone has their own YouTube channel and podcast, this guy had a YouTube channel but no podcast. Now, here's the guy with zero original ideas.
I'm starting to think maybe we bit off a little more than we could chew. Well, we're in it, and we're gonna finish the job.
It's Shawn Cash and the Shawn Cash PodCash.
It's garbage, and I'll tell you why.
It is time for another Shawn Cash PodCash, and I've got at least 20 of these or so that I have to do because, as you noticed, the little intro, I did produce a new intro for the PodCash that has new clips from movies and TV shows in it, and I made a bunch of them, so you're stuck with these for a little while. I do have some questions that I want to answer from my amazing Patreon members, but I have something different that I want to do today, and that's why I have all of these offcuts and greeblies and things that I have printed for different projects that weren't the right size when I was trying to get things right. And I have something that is a question that I want to address using some of these, and I'll get to that in just a second. But thank you very much for taking the time to watch this and watching my channel and putting up with all of the things that I do here. All right, so my first one is I've gathered these in this question. Some of them were questions in my videos, and some were questions from my Patreon members, and they're all similar, and that's going to have to do with this first thing that I'm going to get to. So, what in the hell is water-based oil paint? That's one question. Why don't you just use acrylic paint? Second, what's with all of the fancy paint to make something look dirty? Third, I agree with that one. I have no idea how to weather like that. Fourth, my weathering looks like a preschool art project. Fifth, what's the difference between paints for weathering? That's the one that was from my Patreon member. So I don't want to come off like I know what I'm doing. And for those of you that watch this channel, I, most of the time, don't know what I'm doing. And I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form. And I'm just as curious for the end results of this as you might be. I want to do a side-by-side comparison between weathering with a couple different types of paint. And then I want to try something else. I used to collect and save. That would explain, if I could turn the camera around, it would explain why everything else in this room is a disaster, because this hobby has made me collect some very strange things, and storage for that sometimes is a bit ridiculous. When I made the container over here to the side, which is my Glowforge table, it's a giant metal military container. When I did the cutting on that, I saved the equivalent of sawdust, but the metal. So metal dust, I saved the metal dust from grinding things off and cutting out different holes, because at some point what I wanted to do is I wanted to mix that in with another medium, and I wanted to try and get that to rust so that I could have actual rust on something just to see what it looked like. And then in my random searches on Amazon, I found this. This is metal filings. It is a package of finely ground metal shavings. So I want to try and experiment with a couple different paints and then this. So the paints that I'm going to use, I want to do an oil, water-based oils. I want to do acrylic. I want to try watercolors, which I've used for different things like paper and some metallic things that I've weathered with water-based oil. But I don't think, I mean, watercolors. I've never used water paint on a prop, and I want to see what that looks like. And I want to use some of these little chips of metal. So I want to do that, but first what I need to do is I want a palette. And what I want to do is I want to take a piece of some of the cutoff that I have around here, and I want to make a prop that has 4 different panels that all look very similar, and then I'm going to weather each one of those sections with a different paint to give us a result so that we can all see what it looks like together. Me learning along with you. So again, I don't want to come off as an expert. I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and the first thing that puts me off about a YouTube channel is a guy who's been doing videos for a year and he's talking like he's an expert. I'm not an expert in any way. I make tons of mistakes all the time, and I learn from them, and I hope my mistakes help you in the process. So let's figure this out together, and let's put together a panel first, and let's see what I can make, and we'll come back, and as I'm doing that, we'll get to some of the questions from the videos that I've put out and my amazing Patreon members. So let's get the panel going first. So I've got all of these, and I just need to find 4 similar. Ooh, that might work. I've got a bunch of those. All right, let's put this panel together. All right, so there's the panel that I'm going to use, and I tried to keep them as similar as possible. I mean, the sizing's off a bit because these are cutoffs from when I was trying to actually get something to fit perfectly into a prop, and I'll sometimes take a couple different tries to get it to fit right because I need a press fit for something. So they're all really, really close, definitely close enough for what we're gonna do. So the first one I'm going to work on is the oil. I should probably label these. So I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to oil. I'm going to label each of these. I'm going to oil each of these. I'm going to label each of these so that we know which one is which. All right. All right. So first, I'm going to use water-based oils. These are purchased from Michael's. It's just a brown and black, and I'm going to weather that first section and answer a question at the same time. How do you justify the cost of a laser cutter? I really want one, but I'm not sure how to convince my wife that I need one. Well, I don't think you can justify it. I was very lucky, and I've mentioned this before, but I was able to get a Glowforge because I knew somebody who did the back-end programming of Glowforge through my radio days. And I was able to get his test Glowforge that he was using in the programming. They gave him one, he had no use for it, and I got it. And it sat in a box for a long time before he just reached out and said, hey, do you want this thing? And I said yes, because I'm not dumb, but I hadn't even started my channel yet. I didn't even know what I was going to use it for. I just, as I said earlier, collect a lot of things. But I don't know how you justify it. If you've got kids, all right, I'm gonna take a break from this painting here for just a second. Hold on. I have an example. Let me go grab it. I don't know what they do in other parts of the United States, but here in California, or worldwide, here in California, at a certain age, kids have to do a mission project. They take and they have to rebuild a California mission out of whatever they want. My youngest daughter is at that grade, and they had to build a mission. Now, the mission that they had to build was they had to pick any California mission, and they had to do this, and it was an extra credit project. And there weren't a ton of people that did it. There were only 5 people that actually did this. When we went for open house towards the end of the school year, there weren't a ton of people that did it. And my daughter put it off for a long time. Maybe taking after me. My daughter put it off for a long time. And the day that we were going to work on it was the day before it was due. And she said, hey, I need a mission. And I got up in the morning and opened up Adobe Illustrator. And I decided I was going to start designing the mission in Illustrator. And I was going to create something for the Glowforge to cut. I'm just going to keep painting as I'm talking about this on the water-based oils. So I decided I was going to design this panel, and I was going to cut this out, and I was going to assemble it so that she had a project. And then my plan was that she was going to paint it. That's how it would be part of her project. And my wife started complaining that I was taking this project away from her. And I had to pick her up at a party that same day. She had a birthday party to attend, and I was talking to a couple of the other dads that were in the middle of or had just finished their version of the missions with their kids. And they were all saying that they did it. They did it 100%. I mean, one of the dads, so when we went to this open house, one of the missions had actual plant life growing in it for the landscaping. They had used real live plants in this. The entire thing was thick at the bottom, and they had put soil in there, and it had real plants growing in this mission diorama. I mean, actual living plants. And some used stucco, and some had built it with... anyway. There were a lot of parents that helped out with kids. It wasn't just me. I'm making excuses because I went and I made this. I went through and I have the lattice work that I made. I cut this all out, and this is just the side of the mission. My daughter's mission was kind of like an L-shaped mission, and I took this. This is corrugated party paper, and put that. My daughter painted all of it, and I stopped at this point. My daughter wound up building the side piece that had like the tower on it and the bell, and had all of those parts, and she did all the landscaping, which was just painting on a board. I did do this. And I got a lot of complaints from my wife that I was doing too much, so I stopped and she did the rest. I helped, but maybe you could use that as your in as to why you need a laser cutter so that you can help with school projects. I don't know. All right. But I don't know how you justify the cost of a laser cutter. All right, so the oil is pretty much, I need a paper towel, sorry. I want to wipe some of this off. So oil paint is great. I love water-based oils because it really gives you a dirty, grimy look. And I love the way that it almost has a greasy feel because it's oil paint. And I think the end result, you get that grimy, dirty, oily look. And I love the way a good oil paint looks. And I use a combination of weathering. I'll use acrylics and I'll mostly use oils, the two of those, because they both do different things and I like the way they look together. All right, let's work on the acrylic now. Yeah, get a piece of wood to use for my palette, and I'll work on that, and I will answer another question. I am really trying to get my own YouTube channel going, but can't seem to complete a video without some horrible mistake that makes the video something that I can't complete. You make it look so easy. Can you share your secret? thank you. I thank you for the compliment, but I'm not sure how to say this. I'm, much like I said in the beginning, I'm not an expert at this in any way, shape, or form. I am terrible at this, and I make mistakes all the time. And so right over here to the side in this pile of junk is my Star Wars tool and case that I still haven't decided if I'm going to keep. I hate the case that I made. It's better after the last couple alterations that I made, but it's sitting over here to the side because I haven't allowed it to enter the storage of things that I'm keeping. It's honestly in a pile over here because I just don't like it. And I'm honest about that. And I think that's part of my charm. I am fine with sharing the fact that I'm not happy with something. And there are times, and I've talked to other YouTubers that have said the same thing. I will sometimes, here's an example. When I was making that tool, let me grab some. When I was making the Star Wars tool, this particular head that I'm really proud of. I really like the way that this came out. I love the weathering on it. I like the fact that it has the deodorant container that gives me that turn. I like the little pieces of board that are up here. I really like the combination of laser cut pieces and kit bashing that made this tool work. And I really like it. It is my favorite part of that build. And I went to edit the video, and because, like I said, with this panel that I'm painting, I will sometimes do mini alterations of pieces as I'm trying to get it right. When I went to edit the video for that tool head, I realized that I had forgot to film the assembly. Oh, hold on. The assembly of the body part of this tool. I didn't film it. And I'm an idiot because I'm trying to put together a YouTube video. So what did I do? Because if you watch that video, and I'll put a link up there. If you watch that video, there was, I'll put a link up there. There was, sorry, I forgot to actually do it. There was me assembling the body of that. Because I had to make another one so that I could film it. I had to completely remake another body of this just so that I could film me putting it together. Some may think of that as a waste of materials. I think of that as a waste of materials, but I may use this for something else. I have no idea, but that's the kind of thing that I do to try and help me get through what is an obvious mistake, but so that I can still have the content I need for the video. So you're not alone. I make mistakes all the time. It's okay. Just the best advice I can give you, I'm still painting the acrylic side of this. The best advice that I can give you for getting out there and putting your channel out is you gotta just do it. The first couple are gonna be terrible. Mine were. Just do it. Once you start figuring out that rhythm and you get better at it all the time. And if you just start it, you'll do it. I'm in no way an expert. Yes, it seems to be the theme of this. I'm in no way an expert, and you'll figure it out. I did, and you'll figure it out. All right, let's get to another question. All right, I'm gonna grab my water paints because I think the acrylic Yeah, I think the acrylic is pretty close to being done. So the great thing about acrylic is you can kind of pull it back a little bit more than you can pull oil off of something, especially when it's something this light. If you just add a little more water to your brush, you can get into the crevices. You can take your paper towel and you can pull some of that acrylic back off because it's truly water-based. And it's going to give you, this is almost in order, it's going to give you a little bit less grime, and it's going to give you a little bit more mistake control. So I do like the acrylics. I saw you whining on Instagram about being with the common folk at a concert. Can you share a good radio concert story? P.S. I'm just giving you a hard time about the whining. Okay, good, because I was about ready to get defensive. I wasn't whining. I had taken my wife and kids to a Matchbox 20 concert because when we first started dating and through our relationship, my wife has been a huge Matchbox 20 fan. And I was just saying it was weird now being at a concert, not being in radio, because I was farther back and I wasn't at the side of the stage, and I wasn't used to being in that position at a concert. I'm going to start on the water and I'm going to answer this question. So in my radio days, it was funny because most of the concerts that I went to, it was me at a concert backstage or in the green room or at the side of the stage. And it with Matchbox 20 is just the example because that was what they were talking about in the question. But everybody from when I first started, Pearl Jam, I remember being at the Cattle Club in Sacramento with the guys of Pearl Jam eating pizza, and they played for like 12 people. I mean, it was it was probably more than that, but it was a small crowd. And I mean, Maroon 5 and anyway, there are a ton of bands and people that I got to see on their rise to being superstars. And I had some super intimate, I had some very personal and intimate interactions with band members. And I mean, the guys at Matchbox 20, my wife was a huge Rob Thomas fan, the lead singer of Matchbox 20, and he did the outgoing message on her voicemail that she used for a long time. I don't think she currently uses it, but it's like, hey, this is Rob Thomas. You've called Renee's phone and she's not able to answer her phone. And I mean, that's kind of a big deal when you're a big fan of a band that you're seeing. So it was weird to be at that concert and be out there in the audience. But a story. This is going to make me sound like I'm bragging, and I'm not. If anything, I'm slightly insecure. I'm definitely not somebody that thinks super highly and egotistical about themselves. But this story's going to make it sound like that. But anyway, all right, here we go. I'm going to stop making excuses. So here's the story. Do you remember Meredith Brooks? Meredith Brooks sang that song, I'm a bitch, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm not a singer. I'm terrible at singing. But Meredith Brooks played a concert for the second radio station that I worked at for the second longest period of time. I first worked at an alternative rock station, and then I worked at a Lilith Fair, mostly leaning female adult alternative station. And Meredith Brooks was a big artist that we played that song a lot. And she had done a concert for us, and it was at an outdoor venue. And before the concert, we'd set up a table, and it was for the radio station VIPs, and they could line up and they could have things signed, and she had a bunch of pictures and posters and things for people to sign, and some of them brought their own stuff up. And we didn't have enough security, so she was standing here she was sitting here at the table, and I noticed that people were starting to come from the side. So I got to this side of her, and I was trying to keep people from coming to the side and get back in line. And I'm not a bodyguard in any way, shape, or form. I was just some guy at the radio station trying to help out. And so we were talking a lot because I was just trying to keep people away from her and about nothing. I mean, it's not like it was deep conversation. It was just the two of us talking as we were there. Then during the concert after that, she was on stage and I was standing, let's say I was over to this side of the stage with a bunch of the radio station people, and she was singing her songs, and I noticed, I was looking and I'm like, looks like she's like dead on making eye contact with me. It's weird. I'm pretty far back in the crowd at like a radio station booth, and she's singing and she's like looking right at me, to the point where I was like slightly uncomfortable. So I decided I was going to move to the other side. So I moved to the other side of the audience, and she was doing this, was now doing this, and was making eye contact. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. So I've noticed this, quick side note here. I've noticed with the watercolor paints, it's great at getting into the grooves. It doesn't stay on the surface very well, but if you were trying to use it to highlight scratches and stuff on a print, it actually is doing a really neat job of that for a more subtle weathering. So anyway, so the next day on the air, my morning show partner Jeff and we were on the air, and I start talking about this, and I'm retelling the story, probably in a better way than I'm doing now. But I'm retelling the story of how it was weird because she was like dead set focused on me. And my morning show partner starts giving me a hard time. He's like, oh yeah, Mr. Hotshot. Yeah, the superstar who's performing on the stage is staring at you, and she's making eye contact with you. By the way, I was in a relationship with my wife, and not interested. I just thought it was funny. And we're talking about it, and he's giving me a hard time and going on and on about how, oh, there was no way. And so we had, it's called the hotline, and it was the studio direct number that artists or our boss or whoever would call when they wanted to reach us while they were on the air. And Meredith had done a call-in to our radio station morning show prior to the actual concert to promote it. And we had kind of interviewed her and talked about it. And so she knew that number. And we're in the middle of talking about this and not really thinking about the fact that, oh, well, she's obviously still in town because this was late the night before and it's now the morning show and it's, 7:30 in the morning. I didn't think she would be up. Not that I would have changed this conversation, but I didn't think she would be up, and the hotline starts ringing. And I'm assuming it's our boss. And I treated radio very much like I treat this YouTube channel. I was very honest about things and how things were playing out. And I would take live phone calls on the air all the time, not knowing who was on the other end. So I took it assuming it was going to be our boss, and I was going to make fun of the fact that he was calling. And we answered it, and it was Meredith Brooks. And my morning show partner, Jeff, trying to make fun of me, says, this guy thinks that you were hitting on him and you were staring at him at the concert. And she says, I was. Anyway, it was flattering. Again, not that I was interested, but it was flattering, and it was funny, and it was just something. It was one of those things that I thought, oh, there's a story that I'll have. Is I had this artist on stage who was talking about, I don't know, singing songs and trying to make eye contact with the stupid DJ that was out in the audience. So there's a quick radio story. And the water-based, the watercolors, I'm done with that. And I'm gonna answer one more question, and I'm going to try the rust using this. Again, that was just from Amazon. I'll put a link down below if you're interested. So the last question I have here is, I know you, like me, buy a lot of Star Wars stuff. Any warnings or anything that you have purchased that you regret buying after? That's a hard question because as a collector of toys and things that most people don't care about, I regret a lot of purchases after I make them, because I think to myself, why did I buy this? What am I gonna do with this? And I this is a terrible thought, but I also think these things all the time. I'm just gonna attach this with tacky glue and see if I can get some of these shavings on this plate, and I'm gonna attach these. But I have this terrible thought a lot of times, which is, I know my kids really don't care about this. They don't care about this Star Wars stuff that I'm doing. What are they gonna do with it when I'm gone? Anyway. But a purchase that I've made that I regret. Let's see if I've got a good example. I'm just using a paintbrush here, and I'm gonna put some glue on it, and I'm going to attach these shavings. Let's see what I can do. A purchase that I regret. I do have something. All right, hold on again. This is awful. I made my own thermal detonators with Odin in a past video. And they were amazing prints that were done by Clever 3D Studios. I had them print them. They had a working switch. They were great props. And I did an okay job with them. But I was on Facebook and I saw an ad come up for, I'm gonna assume it was like a Chinese company or some company somewhere else, and the ad talked about how, you know, for a limited time this was only $29 and order now, and I got suckered into it because it looked amazing in the ad, in the Facebook ad, and I thought, ooh, wow, that's really cool. It's got some functionality and it would be great in my case to be able to display with my weapons. And I purchased it. And I would tell you the name of the company, but it was so long ago. This just came 2 weeks ago. And I ordered it probably 4 or 5 months ago. It took a long time to get here. And in the ad, they had a lot of reviews, which I'm assuming now were all fake. It was from people saying, oh, once I put weathering on it, it was the greatest prop that I have ever had in my collection. And it looked like it lit up because the way that they had done the lighting in the picture, it made these very bright painted things look like they were lit up. Or they did some kind of Photoshop where they made it light up. Anyway, I fell for it. And it looked like everything worked. And I don't remember why I think that now, but to me it looked like, well, maybe the switch worked and maybe this like actually closed, like that clamshell, so you could close it and you could open it and this would work and it would light up. And I thought, for $29, that's awesome. And when it arrived, it was the most disappointing thing that I have ever purchased that was Star Wars related. This prop is terrible. This is a terrible, terrible prop, and I was a sucker and I bought it. Yeah, but that was probably the worst thing that I have purchased in a long time that was Star Wars related. Super disappointed in what it was. And like I said, it had been so long I'd almost forgotten about it. And almost at this point, I almost wish that I hadn't received it because it was terrible. This is a concoction that I'm using to make something rust, and that something is these metal fillings. You can see up here, there's a spring that's in this spray container, and you can see that it is rusting. So inside this is salt water. It's just tap water that I added a bunch of salt to, vinegar, and hydrogen peroxide. And I can't give you a good ratio of ingredients. It's probably equal parts vinegar and hydrogen peroxide and a little bit of water. And that water is heavily, heavily salted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray this on the metal fillings that are now attached, metal filings, sorry, that are now attached to this. And I'm going to force it to rust so that I can get this to do what I want it to do. I don't think I need to let that dry either. I'm going to get the hairdryer here. All right. So I have a panel now that has 4 examples. It's taken me about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, to do this. So proof that this isn't something, weathering isn't something that takes forever to do. It's not like this is going to take you all day to make. But here is a perfect side-by-side example of what water-based oil paints, acrylic paints, watercolors, and actual metal filings rusted can look like on your prop. So here we go. There's the end result to what we've been working on. Not bad. Not a bad side-by-side example that I learned probably more than you did. And here's what I'll say about these. So looking at this, I think the oil gives a really good grimy look that I love. I mean, if you watch this channel, you know that I love very dirty. Which sounds worse than it means, than I mean it to. It's a very grimy, oily look. And I use a combination of the first two, the oil and the acrylic, because I think they each offer something different. And what I'll say is this is almost in order. The oil is going to give you a grimier look. I think the acrylic is a little more forgiving. You can pull some of that back off with water. And it's a little more subtle in its look of weathering. Whereas the watercolors, super subtle. If you'll notice on this, the places that it picks up the most for the watercolors is in the scratches that I made on this prop. When I took something like, you know, my wire wheel and I had scraped this, that's the places that you see that it really stuck in just those areas. There's not a ton of weathering. This is the color here on the side. And yeah, that's cleaner than this, but it is really subtle. So if you're looking for a subtle dirt to just get into scratches and cracks, I would definitely recommend the Watercolors. But this rust is awesome. This is the metal filings and the concoction to give you a real rusted effect. I like that. That's a really cool effect. So there you go. There's a quick example of 4 different ways to weather your prop. Something for all of us to learn, and a bunch of stupid stories and more tangents than you ever thought you could handle. Sorry this video is so long. It's just because I was doing this in real time, it took a little longer than I normally take on these, but there's an example of how you can weather your prop 4 different ways. I'm gonna just wrap this up. Thanks for watching, everybody. As always, thank you.